Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush. And today I have a very special guest, Mr. Alex Nelson from the RushFans group. Alex, thank you so much for doing this for me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about Rush with a new fan.
Yeah, well, I've definitely become a new fan over the last sort of several months. It's been really great exploring the catalogue, and I'm looking forward to having not just Alex, but a couple of other of his compatriots from RushFans over the coming months to introduce me to various Rush albums. Now, we sort of met through our mutual friend, Todd Evans. Todd's a lovely guy. He did Power Windows with me. So, yeah, it's just great to have you here. So today I'll get you, Alex, to just give everybody a little bit of an idea about which album you've chosen for me, a little bit of background to that album, and particularly why you chose that album for me.
Excellent. I chose Signals, which was released on September 9th of 1982. It is the quintessential transition album for Rush's very popular hard rock, guitar heavy, drum heavy sound of Moving Pictures and Permanent Waves. And it transitions Rush into their more keyboard driven or keyboard heavy synth era of the mid to late 80s. The album's about 43 minutes long. It contains one of their most famous hit songs, not on Moving Pictures. Obviously we'll talk about that at length. And it was one of Rush's #1 albums in Canada. It made it all the way up to number 10 in the United States in November of 1982.
Great. And why did you particularly choose this one for me?
This was probably my favorite childhood Rush album. My current favorite Rush album is Permanent Waves. But when I was a kid, when this album came out, I had the tape, of course, the cassette tape, and I loved Subdivisions and Countdown so much that oftentimes I would be mowing the lawn or doing something like that, and I would listen to Subdivisions, and I would flip the tape over, and I would get about half of Losing It and then all of Countdown, and it would go to the end of the tape, and then flip it over and go back and listen to Subdivisions again. So I must have done that 300 or 400 times when I was a kid listening to this album. But which kind of short-sighted because there are so many great songs on this album. So yeah, we'll get into that. But the whole album is absolutely dynamic, and in my opinion, musically and as far as technique and showmanship and all of the great things that Rush has as a talented band, I think this album might be their peak of absolute great songwriting and showing what they really can do as a band.
Yeah, well, I know when I was doing the Power Windows show with Todd, he was saying that his favorite kind of Rush albums are the ones with 8 songs on them, with 4 on each side. He thinks that's sort of the perfect balance for them. So yeah, let's get into the album. So the first song, as you said, is Subdivisions. And my first impression of this song was that this has got a much more lush synth sound than pretty much even the later 80s albums, which have a lot of keyboards on them. I don't think they're quite as lush as this song is. The
very full. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. And they're not harsh. There's nothing really not angry or harsh or tinny to any of the keys. They're very smooth.
No, they've still got that lovely warm analog sound to them. I said it's a scathing lyric from Neil about the sort of dangers of conformity, and sort of the joy of, the pleasure that can be found in being an outcast, if you can sort of buck the trends, which something I very much identify with. I was very much sort of the outcast kid when I was at school until I sort of found a band of fellow misfits. I said that the song has a bit of an Abacab era Genesis feel to it.
Sure does. Yep. Which I think came out either in the same year or the next year. It was 81 was Abacab?
It was 81 was Abacab, yeah. And the other thing I noted is that in the solo is really the only part of this song where Alex's guitar sounds like a guitar. And I was going to ask if he was actually playing guitar synth on this song at all.
He probably was. I don't, not definitely not on the solo. That's a pretty pure overdrive distortion sound.
Yeah, but I mean the rhythm parts.
The rhythm guitars, yeah, I bet there is. Either that or he just took a back seat to Geddy's keys in the more of the, you know, the verse and the chorus parts of the song.
Yeah, but it's a really strong album opener, I think, and it definitely does show them moving on, as you said, from Moving Pictures, which is an album I did just a couple of months ago. But then we get into the Analog Kid, and I felt that this one did sound a bit more like sort of the Moving Pictures era or Permanent Waves sort of song. Definitely more guitar driven, this one.
Definitely.
I really like how the chorus is sort of half tempo from the verses. Always like those sort of little things in the Rush songs that I've been listening to so far. I noted that
Neil's snare work during the chorus is really, really interesting because it breaks up the tempo of the verse parts, and it's almost like a pre-chorus where they play the weird snare part, and then of course the chorus is definitely you know, that really driven beat that's pushed forward by the keyboards.
Yeah. I noted that the kid in the lyrics seems to be sort of trying to, you know, just let the world pass him by, sort of hasn't got a care in the world sort of thing. Which, yeah. And then a really hard rocking solo from Alex. And I also noted this song, to me, was quite radio friendly. I could have imagined hearing this on the radio if Australian radio had ever played Rush, which unfortunately they didn't.
Maybe not. Well, maybe during Moving Pictures or Farewell to Kings, but maybe by subdivisions they had moved on to Blondie or UK or somebody like that. You know, more poppy 80s.
Well, no, that's the thing I've discussed with some of the other people that have had on the series is that Rush really never were played on the radio here. They never were big here. They never had a hit record. Yeah. Like I had Peter Kerr on, and he's like a fellow Australian, and we did Hold Your Fire, and he found that one in like a discount cassette bin, and so that's how he sort of discovered Rush in the first place. But yeah, they just really never gained any traction in the Australian market. I don't know why.
Interesting.
But the next song is Chemistry. And I noted that there's an unusual credit on this one, and all three band members get a credit for the lyric of this song, rather than just Neil writing it. Do you know how that came about?
I don't. I think the concept came about during Moving Pictures tour. I think there's some spontaneity that happened during the tour itself. And I know that the title, at least, and maybe the concept and a few of the phrases, Geddy and Alex contributed to. So that's probably why they got a little bit of the credit, because not, you know, less than 100% of the lyrics were put together by Peter.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, the metaphor in this one is interesting to me, because it seems to be sort of comparing chemistry with sort of relationships and interactions, which is funny because chemistry is very, very precise, and the lyric sort of hints at that. Whereas, you know, my personal experience, I don't know what yours is like, the human interactions are anything but precise. But I noted that there's a really good blend of the guitar and the synths in this song. I really like the sort of ratios of the two instruments, if you want to put it that way. And I really love Neil's unusual drum patterns in certain parts of this song. He really does some really nifty little patterns that make the song a lot more interesting.
Yeah, he throws in some odd time tom rolls in key parts. right at the end of not every time, but that really soaring Lifeson guitar part, that part
Yeah.
at the end of that, almost every time Neil throws in an interesting little drum fill that is really cool.
Yeah. No, it's a good song, and you know, and then we close out side one with Digital Man, and the first thing I sort of thought was this the analog kid all growing up?
Yeah, you're right.
And it that's kind of how the lyric kind of pans out to me, you know. The lyric sounds like the Digital Man is, you know, sort of yearning for his more carefree days as the analog kid. You know, in this world where he has to be at certain places at certain times and do certain things. And this is one of those songs where I've had this with some of their other albums where you can hear the sort of influence of the Police in their music. But again, as I've said in other shows, Rush always do it their own way. They're not sort of aping the Police. They're influenced by them, but they do it in their own style. It's a really good song. And I really love the way this band makes use of tempo changes and changes of feel in, you know, it gives a song that's only, you know, sort of 5 or 6 minutes. It does give it that sort of progginess, which I really, really enjoy.
I love the fact that you mentioned the Police, because the chorus certainly feels like ska influence, but the complexity of those chords is far greater than anything that, well, I shouldn't say that. Andy Summers is an amazing guitarist, but the way that Alex plays those particular chord progressions is very complex and very hard to play. And it's indicative of what Rush did, even if they were influenced by a certain form, exactly like you said, they made it their own. And it's quintessentially a great Rush song. And it's my favorite song on the first half of the album.
Yeah, that's really good. So we start side 2 with The Weapon. And this is lyrically a follow-up to, or maybe even a prequel because of the way it's numbered, to Witch Hunt from Moving Pictures. This is Fear Part 2.
Part 2, yeah.
Witch Hunt was Fear Part 3. And I'm assuming I'm getting to Grace Under Pressure in July, I think. And I assume that Fear Part 1 is on Grace Under Pressure. And at first I thought, you know, I was a kid in 1982, and, you know, we all sort of lived under this sort of looming threat of global thermonuclear war, you know, sort of the Americans and the Soviets and all that sort of thing. So I was assuming at first that the weapon that was being mentioned was going to be, you know, sort of atomic weapons and that sort of thing. But no, in the lyric, the weapon is really the fear itself, you know.
That's right.
Sort of weaponized fear. And I really like in the first verse, there's a little link to the song Chemistry from earlier on. Right. Which I love how Neil will do that with his lyrics. Even if an album's not an out-and-out concept album, there's often themes running through various songs on the album. I said that musically, this one has a very new wave feel to it, which sits very well with me because that was really my first love. In 1982, I was listening to mostly sort of new wave music. So, you know, this song, yeah, was really great way to open side 2 for me.
What's your favorite new wave album from the early 80s?
Oh, that's really hard because I love a lot of those. I love so many of those bands, you know, sort of Devo, Wall of Voodoo, Oingo Boingo, B-52s. I could keep going on.
What about Depeche Mode? Maybe?
Depeche Mode. Well, they're
wave?
more synth pop than new wave.
Synth
but,
pop. Got it.
But yeah, I mean, another great band. So yeah. So then we get New World Man. And I this is a song about sort of living in the modern world, but trying to keep your roots in the past. Again, has a bit of that Police influence to it, sort of bit reggae-ish or what have you, but again, done in the Rush style. And then it really shifts into another gear in the chorus, which I really, really enjoy.
Yes, it does.
I could imagine this song doing well on the radio too. And I noted that this is quite a compact song compared with the other songs on the album. It's like less than 4 minutes long. So
they did that on purpose too.
Oh, okay.
Because it was the last track to be recorded for the album, and they only had 4 minutes, so they had to keep this one nice and tight and concise.
That would explain the little sort of slightly abrupt fade out at the end. But was this a single?
I don't think so. Let me check and see what the singles were. New World Man was a single, yes.
Oh,
It reached
there you go.
21 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1982.
Wow, there you go.
It's the only, here you go, this is a great, I didn't know this, it's the band's highest charting single in the United States. They're the only one to reach the top 40. Crazy.
Well, I guess they were considered more of an albums band than a singles band in the States. But it's often, isn't that sometimes the way with these albums? It's like the last song they do at the last minute, and that ends up being the hit. I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind for me is Paranoid by Black Sabbath. That was a last minute thing. They were like, oh, you've got 3 minutes, write us a 3-minute song. And they literally threw it together in a day, end up becoming one of their best known songs of all time. So
the best example of that is Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer, which was an afterthought. Right around this, what was it was 1983 or 82, right around this.
No, it was 86 actually.
It's 86. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought it was earlier than that, but same idea. Peter Gabriel had a great idea, said, hey, Tony, let's jump back into Omar, all the great guys who were on that. Let's jump back into the studio and just throw this idea down, and it becomes Peter Gabriel's biggest hit song of all time.
Which it has to be said is a very un-Peter Gabriel-like way to work. That
Totally,
man is meticulous.
Very meticulous. Yep. But he had the idea in his head. I think he just had to get it down.
Yeah.
And then of course it was amazing.
Yeah. So the next song is Losing It. And I love the intro of this with the synth and the electric violin. It's really, really great. I've had a bit of a mixed run when it comes to Rush ballads. The first couple I'd heard really tended to be, for me, the weaker song on the album. Then there was one on Clockwork Angels that I really, really liked towards the end. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. But so I've had a bit of a mixed run with ballads with this band, and they don't do a lot of ballads. But this one I really like. It's really great. The intensity of it just builds and builds as the song goes on.
It's less of a ballad in totality. I mean, it is kind of ballady during the first few verses and choruses, but then of course it just takes off. The lyric to me seems to be about sort of aging, and it's like a very sort of melancholy lyric about like these were still relatively young men in 1982, so they probably weren't sort of thinking about what when they were thinking about what it would be like to be 70 or 80 years old. I know when I was sort of in my 20s or 30s, I probably didn't relish it much, but now that I'm a little bit older, I realize that maybe it won't be so bad. But and it's less age than more doing something that you love that you're unable to do, maybe because of age or because of injury or because of some other circumstance that's taking you away from. Because remember, the ballet artist in this song isn't necessarily aging out, but just unable to physically perform that anymore, and she's and that's her little story, right? Yeah,
no, that's fair enough too. And the other thing I wanted to say about this song is just the violin solo is superb. It's absolutely
Ben Mink is he's spectacular. they performed the song only 5 times in the R40 tour. It had never been performed before. And I forget the gentleman who played the violin for, gosh, Ryan would shoot me. Anyway, the live version of it was excellent, but it wasn't the same as Ben Meek's version on the record. The record version is spectacular.
Yeah. No, it's really great. This is not a band that do bring in a lot of sort of outside musicians, but when they do, they choose very well. I mean, the other one I'm thinking of was on Hold Your Fire when they had Amy Mann.
Yeah, Time Stands Still. Mm-hmm.
It's
a great tune.
Beautiful.
And of course, Neil wrapped this whole song up in a bow with the quote from Ernest Hemingway, which I think is really interesting, because Hemingway may be the greatest of famous artists who completely lost it, and it's just a spectacular way of wrapping the song up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we finished the album with Countdown, which is a fairly straightforward lyric by Neil's standards about a rocket launch. The music fits the lyrical concept really, really well. Again, I love the blend between the synths and the guitars on this one. I think it works great. It's very pleasing to my ears, and it's a really, really strong end to what for me has been a really, really strong album.
Very strong. This great story behind this song too. The whole influence for writing this particular story of a song happened when they were on tour with Moving Pictures. They were in Florida. They had an opportunity to literally at the last minute jump in a van and drive from their tour location to Cape Kennedy, Florida, and watch the launch of the STS-1 Columbia in April of 1981. And it's a great story because they found out about it. They had to scramble and find a van and jump in it really fast and just barely make it into the VIP area, and then totally blown away by this experience of watching the shuttle launch.
Yeah,
so I mean, it was obviously a very moving experience for them, or they wouldn't have written a song about it.
Yeah. Well, I remember watching that. I would have been a 10-year-old kid when the first space shuttle launch happened, and I remember watching it on the TV, and it was incredible. So I can fully understand why they'd want to write a song about it, but it really is a perfect album ender. I think it really fits well as the last song on the album,
as opposed to Losing It, which is quite sad and melancholy as you described it. And then they finish the album with a very strong, I don't want to say patriotic because that's not the right word, but celebrating the accomplishment of the human species through a great thing like the space shuttle.
Yeah, it's not a nationalistic thing at all. It's more in awe of the science and the technology that sort of allowed the space shuttle to exist. Exactly. So yeah, overall, this is definitely another really strong Rush album for me. I really, really enjoyed this one, and it's definitely one that I'm going to have to try and track down a copy of. Again, the ones that I've bought so far, I've had to buy from overseas because Australian sellers don't have many copies of it, and when they do, they have them at ridiculously expensive prices. So it's actually cheaper for me to get a copy from the UK than it is to get it here. But this is definitely one I'm going to have to track down and get a copy of. So thank you so much, Alex, for introducing me to this album. It's been a wonderful experience, and thank you so much for doing the show with me.
Of course.
Please let all my viewers know where they can find you and where they can find RushFans.
Excellent. RushFans is primarily on Instagram. We're also on Twitter and Facebook. Instagram is just @RushFans. And my account on Instagram is Ignatius XV11, which is Ignatius 17. And just to wrap up this episode with the flare, Signals is not exactly 40 years old. It's 41 years old, but the band just released the 40th anniversary box set for this album. It literally just shipped a couple of weeks ago. So if you really, really love this album, you have a great opportunity to buy the 40th anniversary box set. and be
Nice.
absolutely spoiled with amazing content for this box set, as Rush does with all of their box sets. But it is kind of special that this is now the release of Signals.
Great. That's wonderful. As always, I will leave links in the description for my viewers so that they can find RushFans. Yeah, just wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this for me. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. Everything's playlisted, so if you want to see other episodes of the Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush series, there's a playlist for those. Or if you want to watch my Studio Albums Ranked shows, there's a playlist for those, etc., etc. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Bicycle Legs on Instagram and Twitter, and I now have a Bicycle Legs Facebook page. Links all in the description if you want to come along, give me a follow, and join in the conversation. Would really love to have you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.